This is one of those segments that people claim that we don't make on this show, kind of like the Penn State segment that nobody watches, but we do cover the sport here, especially as I think things are entertaining or really worth leveling up, right in between Ohio State, Penn State, and whatever it is that Colorado's going to end up doing. I find it fascinating that we've talked a lot about Miami and Cam Ward as a nation. We've talked a lot about Oregon as the number one team in the country. And we are always going to talk about Georgia, Texas, Alabama, LSU, the SEC in general, to say nothing of what is a remarkable season unfolding right now at Southern Methodist and Pittsburgh for the second time since 2021. But Iowa State and Indiana, for that matter BYU, aren't really talked about in the same vein as these other programs that we expect to win or can win the national championship. And there's a good reason for that. We really like to know teams won a national championship before we start saying they can win another one. I know, wild, right? It's why we can look at USC and Oklahoma being 4-4 and be like, what happened to you? While not looking at Iowa State or Indiana going, what happened to you? Because Indiana, as you very well know, is 8-0 for the first time since 1967. You might not know that they've only won 9 games twice, 1945, 1967, and they've won the Big Ten championship just twice, 1945, 1967, but they've never won 10 games. And with 4 games left to play and Curtis Rourke scheduled to start against Michigan State, they can get to 9 wins for the third time in school history, and they would be 1 win away from winning 10 games for the first time ever. And right now, it feels like if Ohio State beats Penn State, we're going to have Indiana, Ohio State playing each other for the opportunity to play what we think is going to be Oregon in the Big Ten championship game. And Indiana apparently is that good, right? I say apparently because offensively, defensively, they don't seem to have a sorry position. They seem to be pretty damn good everywhere you look. It's just, are they good enough to compete for a championship? We don't know because we've never seen this Indiana team before. We've never seen Kurt Cignetti at Indiana before this year, and he's undefeated. On the flip side, we got Iowa State, and I have always enjoyed watching Matt Campbell's football teams play. And I think it's because I know what Iowa State has been traditionally. From, I think it's 1986 to 2016, we're talking about an Iowa State program that had 1 winning season, which is kind of unfathomable when you take into account that they were in the Big 8 and they were in the Big 12. But here we are talking about Iowa State, not just at 7-0, being 7-0 for the first time since 1938, but having an opportunity to be 8-0 for the first time ever. From 1989 to 2016, not 1986. Iowa State had just 1 winning record, one for a season. We're talking about Iowa State, having 6 winning seasons since 2016, basically the Matt Campbell era. We were also talking about Iowa State producing a unanimous All-American in Breece Hall, who also finished top 10 in the Heisman voting that year, 2020. And Brock Purdy, who was a 7th-round Mr. Irrelevant draft pick that, it worked out for Kyle Shanahan to say, hey, I think that's the guy. And it leads them to an appearance in the playoffs, and they're a really good football team last year. We don't know so much about that this year, but they're hurt everywhere. They're trying to get healthy. I say that to say that somehow, some way, Matt Campbell has made this thing go in Ames in a way that nobody else has been able to make this thing go. And it felt like the run was going to be over a couple of years ago when they go 4-8. Hunter Ducker gets pinched for gambling. Rocco Beck is made the starter. They go 7-6, but they return 19 of 24 starters. And it feels like something's got to change, right? After that 4-8 season, you saw Matt Campbell move off the offensive staff, right? Tom Manning was asked to go. Offensive line was asked to go. Strength coach was asked to go. Quarterbacks coach went to South Florida on his own. And you get to see whether or not Matt Campbell can rebuild this thing into something that is once again competing for championships like they were when they had Breece Hall and they had Brock Purdy and they won the first major bowl game in Iowa State history. A lot of firsts for Matt Campbell, who needs a statue there the way that Gary Patterson's got a statue at Texas Christian. But I'm looking at Iowa State, who's on the precipice of really doing something nobody's ever seen them do in the sport, which is win 8 games in a row, first time to open the season, and then get to 10 wins like Indiana for the first time ever, and perhaps win their first conference championship since 1912. Now, there's a lot to unpack over the last 112 years that has not gone toward Iowa State winning a Big 12 championship, but that's such a long time for a program that hasn't always been about its football team, but when it was about its football team, it's great. Like Jack Trice Stadium is named for Jack Trice, who died due to injuries that he sustained in a football game. I think about Matt Campbell's come up, right? Him going to Mount Union and how he got started at Toledo before taking the job at Iowa State. And we always assumed that was going to be a stepping stone job for Matt Campbell, who had decided, no, this is where I want to be. I think we can win football games here. A couple years ago, I got Matt Campbell in an interview setting, and I was going, you guys weren't that great the year before. And he said, yeah, but you got Iowa State fans who are like, why do we suck? And what's your response? And it was, he's more magnanimous than this, but it boiled down to, you're welcome. Like, the expectation has been leveled up because Matt Campbell has leveled up the program. And I got to say, man, going back to asking your staff to move on or getting them moved on is not something to sneeze at. As a matter of fact, Rocco Beck gave a money quote here to The Athletic. Coach Campbell did a good job over the past few years getting rid of the ego and entitlement out of our locker room, and not even on the roster, but on the coaching staff. And fast forward to this year, I really do think we have a team that's built correctly, built around the right people, even one that's player-led, and that's not always been Matt Campbell's MO, right, is to be player-led. And he's had some quarterbacks that, frankly, aren't Brock Purdy or Rocco Beck. But Rocco also was cut from Anthony Beck, and Anthony Beck, who coaches the St. Louis Battlehawks, great player at West Virginia, great player in the National Football League, one of the better tight ends nobody talks about, and, a dude that also understands what it takes to win at a high level, has produced a player that can make plays. I did All Facts, No Breaks with Keyshawn Johnson on a show that aired on Friday. One of the conversations that came up is, who could make their way into the Heisman Trophy conversation. And one of the things that Keyshawn said was like Jake Retzloff, who is quarterback at BYU. And I'm like, if you're going to talk about Jake Retzloff at BYU, you got to talk about Rocco Beck at Iowa State, which is neither one of these guys is going to win the Heisman, right? Especially if Oregon is undefeated at the end of the season, wins the Big Ten championship. Miami's undefeated at the end of the season, wins the Big Ten championship. Clemson beats Miami in an ACC championship, probably BK Klubnik. Travis Hunter, I think, is winning the Heisman Trophy, and I don't think that it's going to be close. However, I think we're missing a really great story going on in Ames, Iowa right now as they are coming out of a bye week, and they got a shot, man. They really do. They got an opportunity here to break into the college football playoff rankings as a playoff team for the first time ever. Like, that's what Iowa State is going to do. They're going to be that good. We think that they're going to be right there at the end with an opportunity to be one of the 12 best teams in the sport. And then we'll see, right? Now, I think right now I project them as the 4 seed in the college football playoff, which means that they would be one of the highest ranked conference champions, but the 4th highest, which means you'd have the winner of the 5-12 matchup. And the 5-12 matchup could be anywhere between Texas and Boise State or Ohio State and Boise State. It's not going to be fun. But as Matt Campbell has said before, at Iowa State, you got to go up the rough side of the mountain. And if they can turn a game into a fist fight, that is a game that Iowa State can win.